this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's kitchen time, 3 to do, 2 of which are project plants. So the repotting of those goes in the Project Orchids folder as a progress. And the other one I'm throwing in is what was a really good Brassia, and it got far too big for its mount. I had to take it off, made the mistake of putting it in a big pot, but that was to get the roots in, and the roots have failed. And although it has a nice new growth, if I can get it there, that's what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for those new roots to show on that new growth. Now's the time to repot it, and those new roots can get straight into something new, smaller, more compact, and tight in the pot, all that sort of stuff. So we'll have that one out of the pot. The Bulbopyllum Wilbur Chang has basically squashed up against the pot right round and still hasn't bloomed despite all these new growths. So that's coming out of the pot and going in a tray, one of those new pots I got a while ago. So get that one out of the way. And the other one is the Epidendrum that's currently starting its spikes on all of the new growths basically. We've got a very strange event here because this spike doesn't look right. But anyway, new spike, new spike, new spike, new spike. The others are older canes. And round here, it's not on camera, I'll tip it over. That's unusual for an epidendrum. The spike is branching, as in a proper branch, not just the buds pushing out from the central column. So that's unusual. So, and that one has never been out of its pot since I got it, and I've had that some time. Yes, quite a long time actually. That's well overdue a repot. But when I got it, the media it was in looked quite good. Right, this is Brassia Chieftain Ludlows, which is a primary cross with, how the hell would you say that? Read it yourselves. I mean, Vericosa is a very well-known Brassia, one of the popular species Brassias, has lovely blooms on, and the other one, but endearingly known as Chieftain Ludlows. I don't expect to find any decent roots in here, highly unlikely. They failed miserably. And that's exactly what I expected. That is the root system that went in that pot when I repotted it. They're soft, they're not active. So effectively I'm going to have to take off most of that root system. What I'll do is I'll chop it so that I've got something to put in the pot. The oldest pseudo bulb will come off so that I can get it in the smallest pot possible. And because it's been disturbed, and it does have some new roots coming, and if I take the sheaths off, what we might get is a spur into action, because down here is an eye and here is another one, but I'm more interested in that new growth with its new roots. That's the reason for the repot now, but most of these roots have gone. I'm surprised it survived, but it's using up its stored energy, much of which is depleted, to produce that new growth with new roots. So that's its hope, that's its future. But in the meantime we can get all these sheaths off, which if it does decide to push any roots out, will give them the opportunity to get straight in the pot. So that doesn't need much of a clean-up, it just needs the roots cut off. That's going in a very small pot. It is possible that some of these roots may still be active near the base and they may branch. But we'll chuck that in the sink for Ron later on. Rubbish media out. Right, let's see what's in this one. This is really a what's in my pot. As I said, I haven't repotted this one since I got it, which is very naughty of me, but it did look like the media was pretty good when I got it. We may have no roots at all, we may have a very big root system. I've never even lifted this out of the pot. I'm happy with that. We have roots, and we have active root tips. This was potted quite high in its pot, and quite honestly for this type of reed stem epidendrum, that's actually quite a good idea, because they often grow their new canes from slightly up above the previous canes, which means they start producing aerial roots, but they do have a habit of heading straight down to the media. But it means the base of the plant doesn't get soggy, but the roots stay hydrated, so that's not bad. Clean up under the tap. Yeah, media's still not that bad after all this time. I'm impressed. I've got a horrible feeling this is two plants tangled together. Never mind, you're staying as one. Yeah, pleased with that. Run under the tap, a little bit of a clean off, a very minor trim, and these often grow in the ground. Not always, but often. And as such, it's going to go in quite a large pot so that it's got room to spread. Sorry, I've just spotted a very old stake that's tied on for some reason. I don't think that's mine, although it has got my stuff on it. I pricked my finger on the end as I was getting the media out. That's not bad. There's some old roots on here that I'll trim, not many. There's some old canes that should just lift off like that. Yeah. And I know somebody's going to say, if you pot that up it might grow. I've got one big one. I don't want any more little ones. They take up space, extra watering, and one I'm happy with, especially as this is a reasonable plant. Right, bit of a clean up, little bit of a trim. The idea being that what goes in the pot is this good stuff, yeah? And what gets trimmed off is this stuff round the back. But note, active roots pushing down in through some of the older ones, so great care required, although it does have an extensive root system. So if I make the odd mistake and trim a good one, it'll branch. Branching root system, yeah? So damage to a root tip, not the end of the world, unless you've only got a couple, in which case it may be. So that's that one in the sink. Now this one I want to be not ultra careful with, but this has got some lovely live mat forming moss on the surface of the plant, and I'd like to keep that. I'd like to have some of that moss. It helps keep the base of the plant hydrated and allows the new roots to get into something it feels comfortable with. Now, it should just pop out of the pot as a solid mass. I love it when a plan comes together. So yeah, I actually want to keep some of this moss, so I'm not going to clean the base of the plant off that well. Cool, blimey, this is turned into a bit of a tangle, shall we say. That's an incredible root system. It's even grabbed hold of the large chunky bark in the bottom of the pot that was put in there for crocking. It's even grabbed hold of that. That will be difficult to untangle without running it under the tap. So that's what we'll do. That'll block me sink, won't it? Usually does. God blimey, that's absolutely solid in the middle there, where the larger pieces of bark are. An extensive root system. So hopefully I'll not do too much damage to it. So there's some really large pieces of bark in here that the roots have got hold of. Blimey, that is a large piece. Yeah, so there we go. I'm going to try and keep it as an intact plant, even though like this one has produced a rhizome which currently has no roots, but nonetheless there are some little roots in there if you peel the sheaths back, and now they can get into something. So desheath it. I mean, this one's never had scale or mealy bugs or anything. Some orchids just don't get bugs, even if they're right next to and in amongst plants that have. Some just seem to be either immune or just taste horrible, so the bugs leave them alone. And given the sort of bloom this has got, if there's any traits of that revolting smell as part of the makeup of the canes themselves, the bulbs themselves, then maybe that's why the bugs don't like it. Anyway, we'll give that a run under the tap, try and maintain some of the moss on the top, and we'll get that one into a tray, and that'll be the first time I've used one of those new trays, and that'll be a bit of a different potting for that one, because that needs some work. Okay, I've got my moss in to soak. If you're using this dry sphagnum moss, it really does pay to hydrate it before you put it in with your media in the pot, because even though you might water your pot, certainly with the Orchiata bark, it dries incredibly fast, and you'll find that your moss hasn't even hydrated, and it will suck any moisture out of the bark really quickly, but not get hydrated properly. So it does tend to pre-soak the moss and get it absolutely soaking wet before you mix it in with your media. I mean, obviously if you're using pure sphagnum moss, then you would naturally soak it anyway, or it would be bone dry. Right, so I'll have a bit of a clear up and rinse the root systems and everything and get ready, and then we'll come back and do some actual potting. I'll be back. Okay, we'll knock this Brassia out of the way quickly because it's not a project plant, and in theory I should have done it separately, shouldn't I? The pot's a little larger than I would like, but when this was on its mount it had an extensive and incredibly vigorous root system, and I'm relatively confident it's going to do that again once these new roots get going under that new growth. So the fact that the pot's a little large for the size of the plant, we won't worry too much because I think it's going to take off now. Most of the roots on that plant were soggy and effectively dead. I've left some of the base of the roots on the grounds that it's always worth remembering that you're not playing with the roots, you're actually playing with the velamen. The little hair-like root is inside, and sometimes even though the velamen feels a little soggy and the root appears to be dead, the actual root inside can still work. Not always, but there is that possibility. So I've left the stumps of some of the roots on in case they can help hydrate the plant. It's got one leaf left, so it's still capable of producing a small amount of photosynthesis type feed, and the new growth should push out its new roots relatively quickly. Because it's not got a root system in effect, I'm probably going to have to stake it. I've taken the back bulb off, put a bit of cinnamon on the cut, and as you can see these are the only root stumps I've left. This is a live root, and that was, but the ends come off. But there are signs of root growth on the base. That's what I'm after. So I'm just going to sit that quite near the top of the pot, but not too high up. Otherwise I'll have too much media and it will stay wet too long. But I want to get some mossy bits in under the base of the plant. You never know, it might trigger some root growth from underneath the older part of the plant because of the extra hydration there. Might not, it's always worth a try. And I don't want the rhizome buried, not on this type of plant. So we will start pushing down the side and get this as firm as I can, but without a root system it's not going to stand up. Doesn't matter how hard I press this down and compact it, it's not going to hold the plant up. It just isn't. So all I can do is make sure it's reasonably firm so that when the roots do get going they'll get straight in there and then they'll hold the plant up. Once you get to that point, so it's going to have to be staked. And what I want to do now is round the front of the plant here, where those new roots are, that's just going to get moss. That's not going to get bark, that's just going to get moss. So that that part of the plant can stay permanently hydrated and get those roots going as fast as possible. They won't rot, not on this type of plant. Big thick fleshy roots going into fresh media, they'll be fine, trust me. I know it's not going to stand up, but I don't want to put too much more media in or I'll be burying the rhizome too deep. And I'm not pressing it too hard down the rhizome. You can still get some air around there. Now where the hell am I going to get a stake? It's going to have to go down there. I don't want it near the new growth obviously. And I'm going to tip the plant slightly so that that new growth points upwards a bit better. And see if I can get a stake to stay firm enough just to hold it and stop it wobbling as I water it. Is it going to stay there long enough for me to tie? Yes. this new raffia I've got is infinitely better than the old stuff. I can actually pull this stuff quite hard and it doesn't tear. The other stuff used to fall apart as soon as you looked at it, and if you got it wet, it actually fell apart. This stuff's good stuff. So there we go. That's not too bad. I wouldn't say that is absolutely rigid in its pot, but as I've said, I'm very confident those new roots are going to take off like little rockets now. They've got some moisture around them, because that was potted in large bark, so even though I might have been getting it wet, it wasn't really staying wet around the surface of the plant. So that's that one done. Oh, where's my tag? I'm keeping the tag on that because it's a memory. This plant was a gift. That orchid nursery, Ratcliffe's, very famous Paphiopedilum nursery, hybridizer, famous around the world in its arena, and they went under, they went broke, and they sold en masse to commercial buyers. And what was left over they brought to the Wessex Orchid Society as freebies, and basically they were like a sort of tombola, I suppose you'd call it, because as you walked in the door you took a number and then you went up to the table to find what plant you'd got that went with the number, and this is the one I got, and I was well pleased. It's a lovely Brassia, so we'll keep the old tag simply for a memory. So that's that one done. Right. That's one of the worst cup of coffees I've ever had. I've run out of milk and I can't be bothered to go and get any yet. I'll do it later in the day. So I had some double cream in the fridge. I thought, oh, we'll have a sploop of that. Oh, and that is sweet and sickly. It's horrible. Right. I'll just go and get some more pots because I'll do the other two project plants. In fact, I think I'll cut the video off there, and I'll do the project plants with a new introduction, and we'll pot those up separately. So that's the Brassia done, and I'll see you in the next video. It's more kitchen time, but I want to separate it, keep these project plants separate. See you next time. Bye for now.